Good afternoon. Let's do some business. We are doing it live right here and doing more at 4 weekday afternoons. We get right down to business here with the News Driven Hour right after Ben Shapiro. And right before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5, Mottek On Money, live on the air right here on 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com, and your on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, and all your favorite podcast platforms. On Wall Street today, mixed finish for stocks, with the Dow sliding nearly 300 points. The Nasdaq ended up by 221 points, and the S&P 500 posted a closing gain of 21 points. The Magnificent One, NVIDIA, shares rebounding today, closing up nearly $8 to $126 and change. I'll discuss the latest market action later this hour with investment expert Jonathan Hoenig, Fox Business News contributor. We did see the price of oil hover above $80 a barrel today. Gold at the moment hovering at around $2,331.70. Taking a look at some of the movers today, in addition to NVIDIA roaring back nearly $8 higher to $126 and change, the cruise lines full steam ahead there. Carnival Cruise Line shares up nearly 9%, and we see Norwegian Caribbean Cruise Line shares up more than 5% today. Retail investors taking advantage of NVIDIA's recent correction by buying the dip. That nice bounce in NVIDIA shares of nearly $8 today. NVIDIA had closed at an all-time high of $135 and change back on June 18th and quickly dropped almost 13% over the following 3 trading sessions. Investor interest in NVIDIA has been strongly biased toward the buy side over the past 5 days, according to one chief strategist at Interactive Brokers. He noted that the Granite shares at 2 times long NVIDIA Daily ETF was the 11th most actively traded ticker on the Interactive Brokers platform and also showing net buying. Those investors have also been rewarded by the stock's nearly 7% rebound today. Oil back in focus today with Brent crude settling lower at its lowest in just over a week, easing back a day after geopolitical concerns contributed in a rise in prices to the highest in almost 2 months. Oil traders awaiting the inventory reports we get from the Energy Information Administration. That'll be coming out first thing tomorrow morning. In the meantime, we did see Brent crude settle at $85.01 a barrel, down $1 to the lowest we've seen since June 17th. And looks like the price of oil in New York did settle slightly lower to $83.83 a barrel. We'll be discussing the latest market action coming up here later this hour with investment expert Jonathan Hoenig from Fox Business. But first of all, on Main Street, a big first announcement here today, a big announcement from Rick Caruso, a giant on the Los Angeles business scene. Rick Caruso, L.A. business, civic leader, and philanthropist. Rick Caruso, also former president of the Los Angeles Police Commission, almost became mayor of Los Angeles with solid support of the business community here. Today's announcement focused on public safety. And joining us live now, Rick Caruso. Rick Caruso, thank you very much for coming to the line here this afternoon.
It's great to hear you, Frank, and thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And tell us about your big announcement today.
Well, I made the announcement today that I'm endorsing Nathan Hochman for district attorney. I think it's one of the most critical elections we're going to have. Not only in the county, but in the state of California. We've got to change the direction, Frank, of crime in our region. And we continue to have rising crime, property thefts, hate crime, crime with guns has gone up. It's really at all levels, and it's throughout the county. And people feel unsafe, and people are unsafe. And to me, it reflects directly on our current district attorney, George Gascon. He's failed as a leader, and his policies have failed, and we need to make a change. I think he should be held accountable, and let's bring in somebody that understands how to hold repeat criminals accountable and at the same time give people an opportunity to rebuild their lives. I mean, it's not just a question of incarcerating everybody, but it's certainly a question of accountability for people who do criminal acts and being fair about it. But we need to change, and so I'm happy to endorse Nathan.
On there live with Rick Caruso, and the announcement was made outside the famous Casa Vega family restaurant in the San Fernando Valley in Sherman Oaks, which unfortunately has also been hit by crime, right? Tell us about that venue and the event there today.
Well, it was great for Christy, the owner, to hold us. This is a good example. This is a women's-owned business, a small business in Los Angeles. Her business has been vandalized. The restaurant's been vandalized. Homeless continually come in and literally steal food. But she also has her workers that are taking Metro and taking the bus. A number of times have been attacked on Metro and attacked on the bus. These are hardworking people who are trying to put food on their tables and raise a family here in Los Angeles. Everybody deserves to have a safe, livable lifestyle in our county. And certainly the people that are day workers that help produce so many great jobs and the small businesses of Los Angeles, they deserve to feel safe when they're riding public transportation. And again, our current district attorney has failed, and we need to make a change. And I'm really encouraging everybody to join people like Christy and other small business owners throughout Los Angeles County in supporting Nathan Hochman, and get out and vote. That's what's going to make the difference.
On the Air Live with Rick Caruso, and certainly it's great to see you, as you did during the mayoral campaign, speak up for victims of crime. It seems like the DA, the current one, is more interested in helping criminals rather than the victims out there. Tell us more about how you feel about that.
Well, listen, George Gascon is certainly not helping the victims, and he's certainly not putting away people that are holding accountable criminals that are vandalizing, even with violent crimes. I mean, we're seeing that. There's 14,000 cases, Frank, 14,000 cases of assault, rape, violent battery, violent crimes that he is not prosecuting. And so the message you're sending to the community of bad people with bad behavior is, go ahead and act poorly, go ahead and break the law, and you're going to get away with it. We see it happening throughout our region. And I think we're at this point, hopefully, in our region where we're going to hold our elected officials accountable. I just did a forum with 8 people who are victims of violent crime in their families. A woman who lost 2 sons to violent crime. Another woman who last month was beaten up and left for dead down in Venice. And it was story by story going around, and also the lack of response and the lack of prosecution by George Gascon to hold these violent criminals accountable, and the victims feeling like they're left on their own. These are mothers and fathers that have lost children. And so this is the most important core and responsibility that our government has, is to keep people safe, not only feeling safe, but to be actually safe in our community. And again, Gascon has failed. He gave it a try. His policies don't work. We need to move on, and we need to make a change that will make the quality of life in L.A. County much better.
On the Air Live with Rick Caruso, I had the honor of moderating one of the DA candidates' debates, which included Nathan Hochman, and he ultimately won the primary election and now is in the runoff with George Gascon. It should be noted Nathan Hochman is a veteran prosecutor, whereas George Gascon hasn't prosecuted ever a case in the courtroom, right?
No, Gascon has never prosecuted a case, and Nathan has not only prosecuted a case, he's been on the defense side. He's a very skilled lawyer, very knowledgeable lawyer, and he's also somebody who understands the law but is compassionate. He also understands that it's not about locking everybody up. He also understands that you have to get to the root causes of crime and help people rehabilitate and prevent crime from happening, give people an opportunity to live a very productive life. And there's a balance there. And what George Gascon has done, he's an ideologue. And he keeps going back to these policies that don't work. And, Einstein's definition of, stupidity is you keep doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different outcome. There is no different outcome. And so what is the future of Los Angeles County if Gascon remains our district attorney? It's going to continue to get worse. Simple as that.
On the Air Live with Rick Caruso, and let me ask you about this. what happened in the Pico Robertson area over the weekend, these clashes that are happening, and now the police are stepping up patrols in that area. What's your reaction to what's been happening out there?
Well, we can't tolerate this. The Jewish community has a right to feel safe. The Jewish community has been subjected to hate like I've never seen. I don't think any of it in our lives have seen this. And people have the right to demonstrate. People have the right to free speech. They do not have the right to intimidate anybody else. They do not have the right, certainly, to have any level of violence. So these protesters have gotten out of control. And I think the priority, again, has to go back and be the safety of our residents, whether if you're a Jewish resident, a Palestinian resident, whatever your background is, you deserve to have the right to be safe and walk in your neighborhood and certainly practice your religion and be in your synagogue. So it was disgusting what happened down in Pico. And I think this city and our leadership needs to make a very clear statement that we do not tolerate this. This is not what Los Angeles is about. And we will protect our Jewish community like we will protect all of our religious communities in Los Angeles.
I'll be discussing this more later this hour with Rabbi Abraham Cooper at the Simon Wiesenthal Center. We're on the air live right now with Rick Caruso, and turning to business matters and crime as well as homelessness. We're seeing Hollywood business owners upset and frustrated after planters that were installed to keep homeless encampments from growing were ordered to be removed by the city. You're probably following this story there on Sunset Boulevard. What's your reaction to what's going on there?
I stand with the business owners. The city has failed protecting their businesses. And so what happens is people are going to step in and protect their families. They're going to protect their ability to earn an income, to protect their business, protect jobs of those that work for them. What the hell is going on with our city? You're making the small business owners the bad people because they're trying to protect their sidewalks in the front of their businesses. Things are upside down, and I don't blame them for being upset. I stand with them. If there's any way I can support them, I'm happy to do so. But I think it's time for businesses around this city to
The Ed Milet Show showcases the greatest peak performers sharing their journey, knowledge, and thought leadership.
The quality of your life is really comprised of the quality of the questions you ask yourself, because the quality of the questions creates the quality of your thoughts. And so if you can begin to ask better questions in life, you could have a better life. The reason you're not growing if you're not is because you're not looking to ask a better question. And when you begin to ask the right questions, I believe you begin to get the right answers.
The Ed Milet Show is available on YouTube or wherever you listen.
Families to really start voicing your opinions. And where our leadership is not protecting them, vote them out of office. Let's move on. That's what they're getting paid to do, is to create a livable city.
On the air live with Rick Caruso, and ironically, if the business owner put tents over those planters, they would probably be allowed to stay there.
No, it's crazy, Frank. That's what's crazy. So it's such a dual system. It's not even fair. You're exactly right. So if somebody goes out there and puts up a tent and wants to sleep there, it's fine. You put up a planter to prevent that, and all of a sudden you're doing something that's wrong and illegal, and you're going to be fined. Makes no sense. I mean, it's like the Twilight Zone we're getting into here.
Wackadoodle.
I think we got to get back to sensible solutions to these issues, right?
Getting back to the central point here today, your endorsement of Nathan Hochman for a district attorney here in Los Angeles. But during in recent years, we saw Beverly Hills and other cities get behind the recall effort to try to recall George Gascon, and Beverly Hills and other cities have banded together. And it looks like Nathan Hochman getting a lot of support, of course, from the business community as well. Tell us more about that aspect of it and the kind of feedback you received today following your big announcement.
Well, based on the data that we saw, Nathan is going to get a lot of support. To me, the question is, are people going to really take the time to get out and vote?
Rick Caruso, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon. We've been speaking to the one and only Rick Caruso, business and civic leader here in Los Angeles, philanthropist, also former president of the Los Angeles Police Commission, who has just announced his endorsement of Nathan Hackman for the L.A. County DA's office. He's running against George Gascon. Rick Caruso, if you can hear me, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon. Live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC. Folks, if you're hurt in an accident, you need an experienced advocate, and Clark Fielding and his team of sharks at Fielding Law are on standby ready to dive into your case. My friend Clark the Shark is fearless for justice and your go-to attorney when injured in an accident that was not your fault. Whether it's a car accident, slip, trip, fall, or any kind of personal injury, Fielding Law is here to make sure you get the care, attention, and compensation you deserve. Fielding Law can assess the circumstances of the case, negotiate tenaciously with the insurance companies, and if necessary, file a lawsuit and litigate to seek fair compensation on behalf of you, the injured party. An injury is a major disruption in your life. Medical expenses, lost wages, pain and suffering, property damage, and other losses incurred as a result of the injury are all part of the damages. Don't try and handle the process alone. You need an expert in the process, and the team at Fielding Law are the ones to trust. Put Clark Fielding's number in your phone under the word accident. That number is 833-88-SHARK, 833-88-SHARK, or go to clarkthesharklaw.com. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Good afternoon. Mixed finish for the stock market today with the Dow down nearly 300 points, selling at 39,112. The S&P 500 of 21 at 5,469. The NASDAQ powering up 221 points today at 17,718. With the Magnificent One rebounding today after 3 days of heavy losses. NVIDIA shares rebounding today up nearly $8 at 126.09 at the close. Taking a look at the price of gold, it moved up nearly $1 today at $2,331.70 an ounce. Crude oil pulling back 11 cents at $80.72 a barrel. Among the winners today, some of the cruise lines moving higher. Carnival Cruise Line, for example, up 8.7%, and Norwegian Caribbean Cruise Line shares up 5.1%. Taking a look at the cryptos now, let's see if we can bring up some of the crypto names here. For example, can we bring up Bitcoin? Well, let's see. Bitcoin has been hovering around 60K here. We'll bring up the latest quote here in just a second. Bitcoin and other cryptos have been under pressure, as we discussed yesterday, with the one and only John Najarian, who, of course, has the laser eyes on. So if you missed my conversation with John Najarian, you'll be able to pull that up on the Mottek On Money podcast. Well, Bitcoin today roaring back about $1,400 to $61,705. Ethereum, which, of course, caught a buzz this year on expectations that we will see a Ethereum ETF at some point, moving higher today by $35 at $3,391. And let's bring up Doge here. The Doge price at the moment at 13 cents. Did get a new reading on consumer confidence today. It's the Conference Board's June Consumer Confidence Index reading, dipping in the month of June, but the jobs picture held up. The Conference Board found 38.1% of consumers said jobs were plentiful, up from 37% in May, while about 14% of consumers said jobs were hard to get, down from 14.3%. According to Jeffrey Roach, the chief economist at LPL Financial, the job market appears favorable for those willing to work. As long as the job market is stable, the Fed will remain focused on their fight to get inflation down to their 2% target. As you know, inflation's still running hotter than that 2% target. The job market key to future consumer spending, although consumers became a bit more cautious about the future. They feel pretty good about the present situation. He said inflation expectations improved, income seems stable, and consumers feel good about the job market, according to the latest assessment out today from the Conference Board. We did see that consumer confidence reading falling slightly for the month of June and reflected the ongoing uncertainty among Americans about the future of the economy. Confidence, by the way, has been up and down for the past few years as consumers confronted higher interest rates and lingering inflation, yet a strong labor market and record stock gains have helped to cushion some of that blow. Coming up in the next half hour, we'll talk about today's market action with Jonathan Hoenig from Fox Business. With the Dow today closing down just about 300 points, the S&P 500 up 21, and the NASDAQ gaining 221 points. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. Big day for NVIDIA, roaring back after a 3-day slide. NVIDIA shares of about $8 today at 126 and change. Mixed finish overall for the stock market, with the Dow sliding nearly 300, the NASDAQ up more than 200. Joining us live now, Jonathan Hoenig, Fox Business News contributor, portfolio manager at Capitalist Pig Hedge Fund, author of the book Price is Primary, How to Profit with Any Asset in Any Market at Any Time. Jonathan Hoenig, thank you very much for coming to the line here this afternoon.
Frank, great to be with you. And look, nice to see at least some of those names which had been beaten down, particularly the tech names like NVIDIA, get a bit of a bounce back. But one of the themes we've been talking about is how really the narrowness of the market. And today was just the same thing, only 75 new highs over 226 new lows. So still so many stocks, just as it's been the whole year, not participating in the rally just yet.
On there live with Jonathan Hoenig, that's a very good point. And we've seen the Dow and the NASDAQ really go in different directions lately. The Dow down nearly 300, the NASDAQ up more than 200. I can't recall seeing a situation in recent years quite like this, where the Dow and the tech names have seen such a divergence here.
It's true, Frank, and especially since so many of the tech names like Microsoft are in the Dow now. I mean, they're not solely confined to the NASDAQ. One thing that's true, however, is that so much of the market's gain this year has been so many of those NASDAQ-related, high-tech-related stocks. And Microsoft and Google both at new 52-week highs just today. So, there's still a little bit of oomph at least left in a lot of those technology names. And, Frank, the S&P is up about 15% this year, but the equal weight S&P, that's if it's not weighted by market capitalization. In effect, if it's not weighted by these big high-tech stocks, the equal weight S&P is only up by about 4%. So really all the action this year has been in those high-tech stocks. And that's why I think if you're really an investor, if you're putting money to work for the next 3 to 5 years, I think you've got to look at value. You've got to look at small cap. Start to look at some of the names that haven't gone up hundreds of percent in just the last 18 months.
Yeah, it looks like some of the travel names have come to life again. The cruise lines, for example, what do you see happening there?
Yeah, I mean, what a difference 4 years make, Frank. I mean, it was back then we were talking about names like Zoom, which all the stay-at-home names which were dominating the stock market, and of course, cruise lines were getting absolutely annihilated. Well, Carnival's been on a roll lately, along with a couple of the other cruise operators. It shot to a 52-week high. It's up about 23% year over year. And, there's a lot of reasons why this could be explained. One is just increased travel. We've seen a record high in air travel this year. Cruise travel has really bounced back. And I think if you're looking for a place to take a shot, a stock like CUK, that's Carnival, might be an idea to consider.
On there live with Jonathan Hoenig and oil, of course, a lot of nervousness about what's happening in the Middle East, given the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas following the terror attack on Israel back on October 7th. And, of course, a lot of nervousness about what's happening with Iran and its proxies there. What do you see ahead for oil here, hovering at around $81 a barrel?
I think it goes higher. In fact, Frank, oil has come to life once again as really the strongest of all the commodities, oil and gold. And these are big moves. I mean, oil is it kind of went to sleep for a couple of months there. It was outshone by a couple other commodities. But I think a name like AMLP, that's Alabama, M as in master, L as in limited, P as in partnership, AMLP. This is this whole series of investments called master limited partnerships. And basically, Frank, they own income-producing commodity-related, primarily oil and natural gas stocks, yielding upwards of 7.5%. I think it goes higher here. And, inflation, the numbers have been encouraging for the White House, but I don't think inflation's dead, and I think oil goes higher. AMLP is one way to play it.
All right, and looks like Baker Hughes getting some attention, too. Anything else in the oil space?
Yeah, and then a rising tide lifts all boats, as they say. And Baker Hughes, I think, is another one that's BKR. Or if you really want to get specific, Frank, and bet on energy in particular, DBE. That's D as in David, B as in boy, E as in energy. That's an ETF that holds a basket of oil, natural gas, and heating oil. It's the best and most direct way to play higher prices for energy in the months to come.
On there live with Jonathan Hoenig. And anything else on your radar screen? Any other specific places where you would be putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Well, value, Frank. I mean, growth has dominated the headlines for so long, but telecom stocks, names like AT&T.
America starts the day with America in the Morning.
Pending home sales numbers, they tanked in April, but there
Hi,
are
I'm John Trout, your host for the latest news, politics, entertainment, business, and weather.
High-octane action in the dust. A new film puts...
Our staff of correspondents provide a fast-paced look at the world with specialized reports from where news happens.
It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Amazon.
Concise, accurate, and fresh each day.
America in the Morning, the podcast, available wherever you listen.
Verizon, which have been so out of favor for so long, and many of them are yielding 5% and 6%, but the price action has really improved. In fact, AT&T had a new 52-week high today. Now, you're not going to find it among, the top 10 stocks, and it's certainly not sexy like ChatGPT is, but I think especially in times of turmoil, high dividend stocks tend to outperform. So AT&T and Verizon, think of them as your grandparents' stocks, Frank. These are the old telecoms. I think now's the time to play some of those value-oriented names as well.
This is not your father's Oldsmobile, right? Remember that? And I was thinking another phrase today, driving around. Remember one of the big banks used to have the slogan, Americans want to succeed, not just survive. Remember that slogan?
Yep.
And now it's Americans want to survive, not just succeed, especially if you drive around Los Angeles nowadays.
Well, indeed. And look, inflation has continued to compound, Frank. I mean, studies out about even a majority of Americans making upwards of $250,000 a year are feeling stretched. So, it's names like oil and even some of the gold and silver that we talked about. Look, these are not names that are going to jump up 10 and 15% one day, but we always talk about the trend really being your friend. And I think the trend in higher inflation and with that higher commodities prices isn't over just yet.
All right. Rarely do I get into discussions about the bond market. Don't want to put the audience to sleep, but we see the yield in the 10-year note now at 4.25%, and this inverted yield curve continues. Dr. Mohammed Al-Arian, who's been a frequent guest on the show, commented on social media about this and what this is often a recession indicator, but those who've been waiting for a recession have been waiting for more than a year now. What about what's happening in the bond market now?
This shouldn't happen, Frank. I mean, even a first or second year economics student understands the time value of money, that you should make more on an investment when you buy a bond yielding a bond that's 10 years in length versus one that's 3 months in length. But as you said, I mean, a 10-year U.S. bond yielding about 4.25%, a 3-month U.S. bond yielding over 5.25%. So you're absolutely right that inverted yield curve has had a perfect record of predicting recessions, but it doesn't tell you exactly when that recession's coming. Now, I've seen some statistics, some interesting research, Frank, that the recession actually tends to hit once the curve begins to moderate. So perhaps once interest rates begin to normalize a bit, we see rates on the front end come down, on the long end come up a bit. But whatever way you look at it, I do think now is the time not to be fully exposed. Look, with the market at all-time highs and names like NVIDIA in the news almost every day, I think there's a sense of risk on. But, we've gone almost 355 days without a 2% correction in the S&P 500. That's the longest streak, Frank, dating back over 20 years. You have to go back to February of 2003. So not to be a naysayer, but I think we're due for a correction, which is now why I think it's a great time to have a truly balanced portfolio. Some stocks, some bonds, some commodities, but also some cash as well.
On there live with Jonathan Hoenig. Another big story I forgot to mention earlier, shares of Rivian, this is that EV company, skyrocketing more than 50% after hours today. I see as Volkswagen said it will invest $1 billion in that EV maker with plans to pour in $4 billion more if a planned EV-focused joint venture between the two companies gets off the ground. Of course, some of the EV companies, and namely Fisker and some others, have had a rough ride recently. What's your reaction to this big news this afternoon?
There's going to be some looking for values. And you're right, Frank. I mean, the EV story, despite literally tens of billions of dollars from Washington pumped into all types of cockamamie green energy programs, this has largely been a bust. I mean, 8% of Americans drive in an EV. Not too many more are considering actually buying one. And as you said, shares of Rivian down 90% in the last 5 years. It's not surprising you're going to see some investors looking to pick up some bargains there. You could see it with Fisker, and you could see it with Tesla as well. It's one of those big tech stocks that's really been left behind. And quite simply, Frank, it's because of its exposure to EVs. Americans have hung up on EVs. It's one reason why even Tesla, which is best in breed, still down about 25% year to date.
Terrific. Jonathan Hoenig, thank you very much for taking the call here, Jonathan. Jonathan Hoenig, Fox Business News contributor, portfolio manager at Capitalist Pig Hedge Fund. The book is Price is Primary, How to Profit with Any Asset in Any Market at Any Time. And it's great to have you with us at any market at any time. Jonathan, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
My pleasure. Be well, Frank. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And right out to the freeways we go now, 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Los Angeles police have stepped up patrols in the predominantly Jewish Pico-Robertson area, where a violent clash occurred over the weekend between pro-Hamas demonstrators and Jewish congregants outside a Jewish synagogue. Security's been increased outside houses of worship throughout the city now following this latest dramatic clash. Videos of this getting global attention, and what happened is being condemned by the White House in Sacramento, as well as here in Los Angeles. The Jewish Federation of Los Angeles issuing a statement saying its community security initiative was monitoring the situation and working with local law enforcement partners to make sure the community is kept safe. Joining us live now is Rabbi Abraham Cooper, Associate Dean and Director of Global Social Action for the Simon Wiesenthal Center and Museum of Tolerance in West Los Angeles. Rabbi Cooper, thank you very much for taking the call, and give us your reaction to what happened over the weekend.
Well, Frank, thanks for having me on. I was there on Sunday. I actually came about 15 minutes early and stood outside the main entrance of Adas Torah on Pico Boulevard in the heart of Jewish Los Angeles. It was pretty clear from the get-go that the police had underestimated the number of pro-Hamas participants, people who were very well organized, as well as a very large response from local Jews. And unfortunately, maybe because there weren't enough police or whatever the reasons were, we discussed that, directly with the police and the mayor in a private conversation. But the bottom line is that you had pro-Hamas demonstrators on both the east side and the west side of the sidewalk on Pico, where the synagogue was, and only, in my opinion, only the presence of Magen Am, which is a highly trained group of, run by a Jewish nonprofit. They were the ones who safeguarded that no one who should not have gotten in could have gotten in. It was a very difficult situation, and it went on for hours. Instead of separating the groups on either side of Pico, everyone was pretty much within a few feet of each other. And then I would say about 2 hours into this confrontation, one of the pro-Hamas demonstrators pulled out either pepper spray or bear spray and sprayed a number of the members of our community. And a little bit later, I had some in my right eye. Not a very pleasant experience. But I think the bottom line here is as follows. As I mentioned to the mayor yesterday, she was at the Museum of Tolerance for 4 hours with various meetings. All of our houses of worship here in LA and across America should be sacrosanct spaces. They need to be protected spaces. And no one should have to feel that, if they're going to pray or study or drop their kids off, for a youth movement or a preschool or a summer camp, that they would be targeted. And this was a targeted hit, and not the first one by these groups. I know of previous experiences, not anywhere near the scope of what happened in New York, in Montreal, in Teaneck, New Jersey, and in the Valley here just on Thursday. And what we're experiencing, maybe not unlike some of the things that happened in the encampment, is a new kind, a new level of attack. I can call it domestic terrorism, a targeting of our community, members of our community. Even after the police finally broke it up, many of these individuals went up and down the streets where you had predominantly members of the Jewish community hearing horrible, you should be gassed, killed, etc. It was an extremely, I think, horrific experience, one in which I think the city did not protect the community. And I know you've had me on many times. You won't find a stronger defender of the Los Angeles Police Department than myself. But I think in this case, A, they were undermanned, and secondly, something the mayor did speak about, which really should be a much bigger conversation for all Angelenos. Why are we allowing people full face masks? We have the anti-KKK rules. When people use a mask to make sure you can't identify them when doing this kind of activity. Issues also, not so long ago, you couldn't have a significant gathering without having a permit. Well, it turns out they never sought a permit, and that also meant it was more difficult for the police to sort of blow the whistle on whatever was going on and declare an illegal gathering. So there are existing rules and regulations that I think have to be reviewed by the city council, by the LAPD, by whoever the new police chief will be, and by the community at large, because I think what was violated here, first and foremost, was our sense of safety and attacking our community. And it's not even the issue about whether, when you had people coming to talk about buying apartments in different parts of Israel, that's not the issue here. You can debate that in a court of law. You can have protests. This was a targeted hit on our community, and there were individuals within that group who were well-trained, well-deployed, I might say, who outmaneuvered the police in large measure.
We're speaking live to Rabbi Abraham Cooper. This is absolutely appalling and a very, very serious matter to see the Jewish community terrorized like this, with the synagogue surrounded and scenes we haven't seen since Nazi Germany in the 1930s. And I just spoke to Rick Caruso about this. He, of course, also appalled by this, the former president of the police commission. And we're hearing maybe one arrest made in all of this. How's that even possible?
Well, there are a couple of, investigations of some of those individuals. And how is it possible, Frank, when you don't? Again, I think also police are human. And let's say they even had the manpower to pull in a few dozen people who probably should have been arrested. I think there are a handful of active investigations right now. But what happens when you take individuals who are detained by the police and hand them over to the prosecutors in LA, in New York, in Chicago? Generally speaking, they're back out on the street, before the ink is dry. So there are a lot of issues here. Obviously, first and foremost, our community. I want to give high grades to Mayor Bath. Within less than 24 hours, she was here at the Museum of Tolerance with community leaders, with top LAPD, with Magay Nam, the great group that really held it together, and also to our councilperson, Katie Yaroslavsky. But we have to also be honest with ourselves here in Los Angeles. We are woefully underrepresented in terms of simply the number of police that are available. The folks that are on the ground, the captain and others, called in for reinforcements. It took a lot longer to be able to get people throughout the city. Yep. And it clearly, we need more police. We need rules that will be fulfilled, and we need prosecutions of people when they actually are arrested.
Rabbi Cooper, thank you very much. I wish we had more time, but we'll have to stop there, and look forward to speaking with you again. And again, so sorry you had to endure this over the weekend. We'll keep an open line to you. Rabbi Abraham Cooper, Associate Dean and Director of Global Social Action for the Simon Wiesenthal Center and Museum of Tolerance in West Los Angeles, live with us here this evening on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC.
Are you into weird, spooky, and strange history? Horrifying History tells you about the side of history that people don't normally talk about. We tell the tales of haunted places, infamous true crimes, unsolved mysteries, the paranormal, and then we look to history to see where the truth actually lies. Want to get spooky with us?
Horrifying History, part of the Believe Network. Just search BLEAV on YouTube or wherever you listen.